Hey, it's Jay. There's a moment in The Alchemist that reveals everything about the true nature of alchemy. Santiago, a shepherd from Spain, crosses continents chasing a treasure he saw in a dream. He endures omens, mystics, betrayals, trials that seem external but are actually the reflections of his inner world. When he finally reaches the Egyptian desert and digs, he finds nothing. The gold isn't there. Then a thief comes, robs him, and mocks him, and tells Santiago his dream of a treasure buried under a tree in a ruined Spanish church, the exact place Santiago once slept as a boy. So he returns home, digs beneath that tree, and there it is. The treasure was there all along. But here's what most people miss. The treasure didn't change. He did. The journey wasn't about acquiring gold. It was about acquiring the sight to see what was already his. For over 1,000 years, alchemists have searched for the Philosopher's Stone, the key to turning lead into gold, to defy death, to decode the universe itself. But those who chased it with greedy hands never realized gold was never the point. The stone was never something to possess. It was something to understand. And once you realize what they were really seeking, you'll see why both Eastern and Western alchemists, despite their cultural differences, were fumbling toward the same hidden truth. The real Philosopher's Stone is not what you think. And the craziest part of all is that it's been right in front of you your entire life, closer than your next breath. Today we'll dig deep into the real meaning behind the Philosopher's Stone and how to achieve it. When Joseph Needham arrived in China in the 1940s, Western academia had already discarded Chinese science as mystical symbolism, primitive superstition unworthy of rational thought. But Needham, a Cambridge biochemist turned sinologist, saw what others couldn't. He discovered that Taoist alchemists weren't spinning fairy tales. They were conducting internal experiments on themselves. What Westerners dismissed as esoterica was actually a systematic, empirical science of consciousness, hidden beneath poetic language. While European alchemists melted metals in furnaces, the Taoists turned inward. Their fire was mental, not physical. They weren't chasing gold, they were transmuting the self. They discovered that consciousness could regulate biology, and they built an entire operating system to prove it. Taoist inner alchemy, Needham, wasn't based on faith, it was based on protocol. Breath regulation wasn't just for relaxation, but it was a tool to alter the autonomic nervous system, triggering parasympathetic dominance, modulating heart rate variability, and even influencing gene expression. So energy circulation was not magic. It was precise mental imagery mapped onto bodily sensation, optimizing bioelectric feedback. The meridians weren't imaginary. They were descriptions of electrochemical pathways that you could train through directed awareness. Sexual energy retention wasn't about purity, it was about hormonal hacking. They learned to redirect endocrine flows to fuel regeneration, clarity, and creative output. Internal visualization was not mysticism, it was neuroplastic entrainment, the conscious rewiring of the brain. These were not spiritual rituals, they were conscious protocols of biological engineering. The famous 3 treasures of Taoist thought weren't vague symbols, they were a pre-neuroscientific schema for managing energy, awareness, and essence. And guess what? They worked. Needham documented evidence of extended fasting with no malnutrition. He documented breath mastery that resisted illness, iron shirt techniques that boosted immunity, and pain tolerance through mind over matter focus. Some adepts even slowed aging, not through magic, but through volitional control of cellular behavior. Taoists proved what Western science still cannot admit, that the mind can reprogram the body. But Needham hit a limit. He could observe the outcomes, he could catalog the consistency, but he couldn't explain the core mechanism. How does visualization restructure tissue? How does mental focus change biological function? What is the actual interface between mind and matter? The answers didn't lie in mysticism or chemistry or psychology. They lay in mathematics. Because the missing link wasn't chemical, it was ontological. The Taoists found the interface, but they never discovered what it was interfacing with: a mathematical mind, a monadic processor running Fourier mathematics. The mind generates frequencies. It's not mystical, it's mathematical. To understand the true philosopher's stone, we must understand that consciousness is not a byproduct of biology, it's a living equation. And the greatest irony is that the final revelation wouldn't even come from the East. It would rise from the West's own shadow, the domain of pure reason, of abstraction, of radical logic, the dream laboratory of the soul. While Eastern alchemists were engineering their biology from the inside out, European alchemists projected their great work into the external world, into furnaces, beakers, and encrypted diagrams. Historians dismissed it all as superstition, proto-chemistry, failed science from the Dark Ages. Then came Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist treating patients with psychosis and neurosis who noticed something no one else did. The bizarre symbols and visions his patients produced during therapy, they matched the illustrations in medieval alchemical manuscripts. This wasn't just a coincidence. Alchemy, Jung realized, was never about turning lead into gold. It was about turning chaos into order in the mind. Jung decoded the deeper purpose of alchemical imagery. It wasn't chemical, it was psychological. Specifically, it mapped the inner transformations of the unconscious mind through what he called archetypes. But even Jung missed the final piece. Archetypes are not metaphors, they are mathematical waveforms. They are emergent, self-organizing patterns in a frequency domain. The unconscious isn't chaotic, it's structured by Fourier mathematics. Alchemy was a symbolic system for modulating that inner signal structure. The philosopher's stone wasn't a physical substance. It was the stable attractor at the end of an internal waveform refinement process. What made Western alchemy unique was its development of a symbolic interface to engage the unconscious. Jung called it active imagination, a process of engaging inner archetypes through symbols, dreams, and visions. But what was really happening beneath the surface? Symbols weren't just poetic fluff, they were actually frequency instructions. So the marriage of opposites wasn't just spiritual, it was harmonic synthesis. Individuation wasn't mystical at all, it was simply waveform coherence. And the great work wasn't occult, it was ontological optimization. See, symbols are not decorations, they are control codes for consciousness. Jung's most powerful insight was what he called the transcendent function, the capacity of the psyche to reconcile internal polarities and generate a higher level of order. Psychologically, he saw it as a bridge between conscious and unconscious. Ontologically, it's clear what was happening. The transcendent function is the monad's ability to run nonlinear Fourier operations on its own mental signal, the monad using its internal math code to evolve itself. But then Jung stumbled on something even stranger, synchronicity. His patients' internal transformations were somehow warping their external realities. Dreams playing out in waking life, patterns of thought echoed in patterns of the world. It defied causality. Jung was shaken. He began to suspect that mind and matter were connected at a deeper level, a unified field, but he couldn't explain it. Without math, it remained mystical speculation. Jung proved that the unconscious was programmable. He pioneered psychological alchemy, but he didn't know what the unconscious was. He never saw that mind and matter are just two frequency states of the same ontological medium. He didn't know that the unconscious is a mathematical processor and symbols are frequency instructions. The final piece was missing, the revelation that Fourier mathematics is the operating system of the soul. It's all in the math. The unconscious doesn't interpret symbols like poetry, it processes harmonic input. And once you understand that, you're no longer a mystic, you're a coder of consciousness, a mathematical alchemist. So for thousands of years, Eastern alchemists proved that the mind could transform the body. Jung proved that the mind could restructure the psyche, but none of them could answer the fundamental question, why does this work? Why does the mind change the body? Why do symbols rewire the mind? The answer has now been revealed through ontological mathematics, the revolutionary system presented in the God series by Mike Hockney, and it's more radical than anything the world's philosophers, scientists, or mystics ever imagined. Reality is mathematics, and mathematics is mind. Ontological mathematics makes a single paradigm-shattering assertion. Everything that exists, matter, energy, space, time, thought, sensation, is composed of ontological sine and cosine waves. perfect mathematical frequencies projected by immaterial minds called monads. There's no divide between mental and physical, no substance versus spirit. Everything is frequency, everything is math, everything is mind. In ontological mathematics, you aren't a body, you aren't a brain, you aren't a consciousness trapped in flesh. You are a monad, a dimensionless immaterial point of eternal mathematical energy. You are a self-contained frequency system generating and experiencing your own internal waveform space. You are a living Fourier engine processing infinite sinusoidal data. And here's the breakthrough. And you can modulate your own equation. You can edit the waveform. You can rewrite the code. You are not just the experiencer, you are the engineer. With this understanding, everything becomes clear. Eastern alchemy was about using focused mental intention to direct and reconfigure biological systems. It was internal Fourier engineering, breath, visualization, and energy flow, restructuring your own sinusoidal field. Western alchemy used archetypes, symbols, and structured imagination to reorganize psychological waveforms. Active imagination was waveform editing. Symbolic resonance was harmonic realignment. Both systems worked because all layers of self, body, mind, and emotion are constructed from the same mathematical material. Mind alters matter because matter is mind, crystallized. And now we see what no ancient alchemist could. Matter is not substance, matter is resistance. Monads are closed systems. They can't perceive each other directly. So how do they interact? They synchronize projections into a shared mathematical domain. When multiple monads project overlapping frequency patterns, the interference creates stable standing waves. This shared projection, the synchronized co-generated Fourier field, is what we experience as physical reality. Resistance is what allows you to observe, reflect, and evolve. Without it, there would be no experience, only instantaneous knowing. Again, matter is simply crystallized mind. It's a feedback mirror made of math. The unconscious mind is not metaphorical. It is a literal mathematical processing engine. When you use visualization, suggestion, ritual, or affirmation, you're not playing with symbols. You're delivering frequency data to your internal Fourier system. The subjective mind receives these signals, decomposes them, and reconstructs new internal states by realigning your frequency configuration. This is how change happens, not psychologically, but mathematically. The great mistake of all ancient systems, Eastern and Western, was that they sought things instead of structures. They sought gold, light, and bliss. But the Philosopher's Stone isn't a substance, it's a mathematical state, the optimized waveform of a self-aware monad. You don't find it, you have to engineer it. You are not a student of mathematics, you are mathematics. You're a self-writing equation, a mind encoded with infinite potential waveforms, a monad that can choose to remain random and chaotic or learn to compose its inner orchestra into resonance. That is what true alchemy is. It's not about symbols, chemistry, or gold, but mathematical self-mastery, ontological engineering, and becoming the stone. And now we arrive at the ultimate revelation, the final piece that completes the alchemical puzzle. For thousands of years, alchemists searched for the Philosopher's Stone in metals, in symbols, in secret rites. They searched everywhere, except the most obvious place of all. It was hiding in plain sight, in every equation, in every number system, in every calculator. The true Philosopher's Stone is zero. Most people have zero knowledge of zero. That's why they have zero gnosis, zero real understanding of how reality actually works. Zero isn't the absence of value, it's the origin of value. It's not emptiness, it's infinite potential. In ontological mathematics, zero is the monad, the foundational mind unit from which all of reality emerges. Zero is pure potential. It's the mathematical domain where all frequencies exist in superposition. It is perfect balance, the point where opposites cancel. It is infinite creativity, the womb of all form, all motion, all thought. It is a complete wholeness containing everything by appearing as nothing. And it is ultimate unity, a singularity that generates infinite differentiation. Zero is not nothing. Zero is the eternal engine of everything. The universal zero is the undivided singularity, an infinite stack of overlapping monads occupying the same mathematical point. Individual monads arise through asymmetric frequency differentiation. Each monad is still mathematically zero. Its total wave sum equals zero, but its internal frequency configuration is unique and not phase aligned with others. This is how the one becomes the many, how pure mind fragments into individual perspectives. Yourself is not an illusion. It's mathematically necessary differentiation within the field of zero. The universal zero is infinite unconsciousness, total symmetry, timeless superposition. It holds everything, but experiences nothing. Individual monads represent the first rupture of symmetry, the first step towards consciousness. But a monad can't become conscious alone. To awaken, it must observe itself. And observation requires resistance. It requires feedback, friction, the challenge of externality. Matter provides that resistance. When many monads synchronize their projections, they generate a shared waveform domain, what we call reality. This domain reflects, challenges, and conditions the monad, forcing it to evolve. Just like the muscles need resistance to grow, mind needs matter to wake up. That brings us to Euler's formula. Euler's formula isn't just math, it's the ontological signature of existence. Euler's identity shows how pure mathematical energy via rotation in the complex plane can generate and dissolve the universe without ever breaking the conservation of zero. It is zero becoming being and returning to itself. This formula is the true philosopher's stone. It's not a metaphor or symbol, it's the actual function through which zero expresses everything. So here is the ultimate irony in human history. The thing everyone was searching for was the thing they were searching with. Every mathematician, every scientist, every engineer uses their mind without realizing they are holding the stone in their hand. Every spiritual seeker who's ever meditated on emptiness was staring at zero without understanding what it really was. Santiago's journey in The Alchemist captured it perfectly. The treasure was always under his tree, but he had to change to see it. Likewise, the philosopher's stone isn't something to find. You are it. You are not trying to become something else. You are mind waking up to what it already is. Mathematics recognizing itself. Zero isn't out there. It's the ground of what you are. When you meditate on zero, you return to the singularity. You remember that every possible waveform exists inside you, waiting for activation. You are a conscious modulation of the universal wave field. This flips the table on everything. Instead of seeking gold, you engineer frequency coherence. Instead of chasing enlightenment, you optimize your waveform. Instead of hoping for salvation, you become your own solution, your own savior. Alchemy was never about turning lead into gold. It was about turning mind into its optimal mathematical form. So the philosopher's stone isn't a chemical. It's not even a state of mind. It's ontological understanding. It's mathematical mastery. It's gnosis of zero. The great work is complete the moment you realize it was never something to start. You were always the gold. You were always the lab. You were always the wave equation. You are mathematics, waking up inside itself. Welcome to zero gnosis. Welcome to your true nature. The treasure was always beneath your tree. You just needed mathematical eyes to see it.